If you pull up a map of Europe, you'll see one country sitting right in the middle, smack in the center of it all. But for thousands of years, this spot has been way more than just a geographical center. It's been a crossroads, a battlefield, and a total melting pot where the story of the continent itself was hammered out. You see, this land didn't just watch Europe's big moments from the sidelines, it was the main stage. It's a place that was constantly being pulled and pushed and reshaped by powerful neighbors, but through all of that, it somehow managed to hang on to this fierce, unique identity. And that tension, right there, is really the heart of this story.
So where do we even begin a story this big? Well, how about here? 800,000 BCE. And no, that is not a typo. That's how old the very first sign of human ancestors is in this region. Just a simple stone tool. We're kicking this off in a time so mind-bogglingly deep, it's almost hard to wrap your head around.
And pretty quickly, it gets way beyond just survival. Take a look at this little figure. This is the Venus of Dolní Věstonice, and it's nearly 30,000 years old. It's one of the oldest ceramic artifacts ever found anywhere on Earth. And that tells you something really important. Right from the start, this wasn't just a place to live, it was a place to create.
It's a story of different peoples, powerful kingdoms, and earth-shattering revolutions, all forged right here in the heart of the continent.
So, let's start with the first group that actually left a name on the land, an identity we can still trace all the way back. Our story really gets going with the Celts.
Ever wonder where the name Bohemia comes from? Well, this is it. It comes from a Celtic tribe called the Boii. They settled here, and when the Romans showed up, they called the area Bohemia Hyem, which is basically just Latin for land of the boy. That name stuck, and it echoed through the centuries to become the word we know today, Bohemia.
But the Boii were just the first layer. After them came Germanic tribes like the Marcomanni, who famously went head-to-head with the Roman Empire right on this frontier. Then, during the massive migration period, a whole new group swept in from the east, the Slavs. And they're the ones who would lay down the permanent foundation, ethnically and linguistically, for the nation we know today.
Okay, so with the Slavs on the scene, the story starts to shift. We're moving away from just migrating tribes and into the creation of actual states. This is the moment a distinct Czech identity really starts getting forged in both steel and faith.
Now, a kingdom doesn't just pop up overnight. It was a step-by-step process. First, you get a simple union of tribes led by a merchant named Samo, basically for self-defense. That eventually grows into the powerhouse known as Great Moravia. And out of its legacy rises the Duchy of Bohemia, led by the incredible Přemyslid dynasty, who would go on to steer the ship for the next 400 years.
Great Moravia was so much more than just an empire. It was a cultural heartland. Its rulers invited two missionaries, Cyril and Methodius, who not only brought Christianity, but also invented the very first Slavic alphabet. This was a total game-changer, giving them a literary and religious tradition that was separate from their powerful German neighbors.
So, when Great Moravia eventually fell, the Přemyslids of Bohemia saw their chance, and they took it. I mean, these guys were wildly ambitious, pushing their borders way out into modern-day Poland and Hungary. The ultimate prize finally came in 1212, when their leader was officially granted the title of king. The Kingdom of Bohemia was officially born, a brand new power player in Central Europe.
You know how it goes in every great story, right? There's an incredible peak, and then there's a moment of crisis. For Bohemia, these two things happened back to back. An unbelievable golden age was followed by a century of absolutely devastating religious war. In the 14th century, if you were in Europe, Prague was pretty much the center of the universe, and that was thanks to one man, Charles IV. He wasn't just the king of Bohemia, he was the Holy Roman Emperor. So he made Prague his imperial capital, founded the very first university in Central Europe, and legally defined the lands of the Bohemian crown, locking in the kingdom's status for centuries to come. But right after that golden age came the storm, and it was sparked by a single man, John Huss, a church reformer who had the nerve to challenge the Pope. When they executed him for heresy in 1415, they thought they were ending a problem. Instead, they lit a fuse. It kicked off the Hussite Wars, a massive rebellion that was basically the Protestant Reformation a full century before Martin Luther.
This tension just simmered for generations until it finally exploded in the 17th century. On one side, you had the Czech nobles, who were mostly Protestant and just wanted to keep their religious freedom and local power.
On the other side, you had the incredibly powerful Catholic Habsburgs, who were now in charge and wanted to run everything from Vienna. Yeah, these two were on a collision course. That collision course ended in absolute disaster for the Czechs. After their rebellion was crushed, the Habsburgs decided to send a message, and that message was this number, 27. 27 Czech leaders, publicly executed in Prague's Old Town Square. It was a brutal, terrifying display of power that kicked off 300 years of Habsburg rule and totally crushed Czech independence.
All right, so after centuries of being relatively quiet under the Habsburgs, the 20th century hit the Czech lands like a whirlwind. Seriously, the pace of change was just dizzying. It was a true political and social roller coaster.
I mean, just try to keep up with this century. 1918, independence at last. Czechoslovakia is born. But just 30 years later, it's swallowed up by the Iron Curtain. In 68, you get this breath of fresh air, the Prague Spring, only to see it crushed by Soviet tanks. Then, in 89, a revolution so peaceful they called it Velvet, brings freedom back. And just 4 years after that, a peaceful split, the Velvet Divorce, creates two new nations. It's a lifetime of history crammed into just a few decades.
That communist takeover in 1948 wasn't just a change of government, it was like a giant steel door slamming shut on history. It forcibly cut centuries-old cultural and political ties to the West, locking the country behind the Iron Curtain for more than 40 years.
But after communism fell, the final chapter of this long story saw the country pivot back to the West with incredible speed, first joining the NATO military alliance and then becoming a full member of the European Union. It was like they were finally rejoining the family of democratic European nations where they had always belonged.
So, from Celtic tribes all the way to the European Union, this land has mastered the art of transformation. It's been a kingdom, an imperial province, a democracy, a communist state, the whole shebang. So now, back again as a free nation in the heart of Europe, it faces the big question. In a world that never stops changing, what will its next chapter be?